Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. Hello, and welcome everybody to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
How's it going, Sarah?
So good. I mean, I got to admit, some days I feel like, oh man, I compare myself to Mel Robbins. I'm like,
Wow,
I
good
got a long
comparison.
ways to
She's
go.
awesome.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, man, I am no Mel Robbins.
But
She had a
what do you mean
really
by
good,
that?
she's just, I mean, like this is her day job. So she's just a freaking good interviewer. If I
Um,
podcast interviewed you for like 2 hours, I think you would die. We would both need snacks. I mean, we could have tons of stuff to talk about, but whew, that woman's got some skills.
you are so funny. Well, it's nice to be
Uh,
back in person with you again for a week.
yes. It's funny. I was just thinking, like, it doesn't feel like you were gone at all. Like, I don't know. You just pop in naturally and come back, and you're just seamless in your integration,
I try.
even though your brain is mush from jet lag.
Yeah, yeah. I was in Sicily for those that are listening for the last few weeks. Part working, part fun. And then I'm back in Phoenix now for a while, and then Sarah's taken off for what 2 months
Uh-huh.
in about a
Uh-huh.
week.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited and nervous.
Good
I
for
don't
you.
know. It'll be fine. It is what
That'd be
it is.
awesome.
At this point, we're gonna have vet techs working in the airport. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Wow, we're going there.
Oh
Okay,
no.
let's avoid politics and war conversations, please.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess we're doing that, but we're going to talk about AI. And so, where I think Jay and I are different than all the nonsense you guys are hearing is the very like specific types of nuggets and conversations. And so today we want to talk about, are you an AI driver or is it driving down your business? And the two are very different. So, one of the, I don't know what we'd say if it's like a phrase of use, it's kind of like a competency description in terms of AI usage. There are some camps of people, and we've talked about this before, and we have our Tuesday podcast for 2 minutes to share AI tips. But one of the things we're hearing is, are you an AI driver or are you an AI passenger? And there's actually an article by section that I'll put in the podcast notes, but ultimately they are now coming out with definitions. And some of these, like theys, I mean, are companies that are helping to consult and kind of unpack the complicated nature, especially when it comes to enterprise. Like it's not a small ask or a small budget item to implement AI. And so we don't want to misunderstand that that's a bigger ask than like a smaller organization or even some SMBs that are rolling out very specific pilots. But there are now like competency evaluations that can be done through AI usage in organizations. And so the evaluation is, to me, indicative of another form of the evolution of AI in business. The fact that you can also say that like ROI generated per employee increasing is a positive metric in your AI adoption. And or I think another one I saw was time to failure. Basically, like how quickly are you failing in your experiments and how quickly are you repurposing them to find the solution? I think they were even talking about like Sora was built in like a matter of months with 4 devs. It was just like a tiny little project that exploded. And
Hmm.
so, Jay, I think both of us are kind of hearing, all of us are hearing different things. Our leadership team is surprisingly incredibly well read, but we're all hearing some conflicting things, but a lot of the same things. And you didn't attend that section webinar, but you did read the article, kind of explain to the audience the basics of like what is an AI driver versus an AI passenger, or we'll call it the passenger princess.
That's really cute. Um, well, I think for me, I mean, the article, and again, I'm glad to hear you're going to share it. It's a very quick read, but it validates a lot of what we've been talking about for, gosh, probably 2 years plus now. And I think for me, the biggest takeaways is that, I think more and more people are getting comfortable at least popping into AI, LMs like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, whatever tool they're comfortable with. And, just asking it some basic generic information. And then, from a passenger side, then feeling disappointed with, the response they get. And so, I think it ties in well to like how we think about strategy is that, it's like a challenger mindset. And I think for me, as I know that it's well known, it's getting better and better literally every day. But one of the biggest complaints people had for the first year or so, like with ChatGPT, for example, is all the hallucinations. It just would flat out lie. I mean, you could ask it basic things like, how many R's are in the word strawberry? And it'd be like, one, or it'd be like five. Like it would just make up stuff and it would confidently make up stuff. And I think unfortunately that I think hurt a lot of people's trust where it's like, why should I use this stupid tool? It's just making me feel even dumber. And I think that is where I would tie it into the kind of the category of that passenger princess side is that, if you're just using it with some generic questions and not really giving it strong direction and pushing back from that kind of challenger mindset, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think, that's where you switch the gears from becoming a passenger princess to allowing it to be, you driving the system and helping leveling you up and filling in gaps. I mean, that's where I find obviously huge value in it. So when I read that article, it talked a little bit about that as far as like, having like strategic, challenging conversations with AI and just keep pushing back and keep probing away. And that's where I think, people that are more in the driver camp are the ones that are taking the initiative to really push these systems in all aspects of your business and as well, obviously in personal too. But I think from your point on the name of this show, I think for businesses that are not being a driver when it comes to leveraging AI in all aspects of their company across every department, they are going to be sadly surprised in a short period of time, maybe within the next 6 to 12 months, where they're going to have competitors that are drivers and using it, and they're going to just quickly get so far ahead of them in all aspects again of their companies. That's why I thought the article was very validating regarding how we've been thinking for quite some time now that I thought was a really good way to kind of tell the story.
Yeah, because the one thing we can't ignore is that this is someone even asked a question on this morning's webinar, which was um, it was a very contradictory question. I honestly can't remember the exact context, but instead of butchering it, it will be, you know, we're supposed to rely on AI, and yet it is hallucinating and unreliable. And so, like, how do I figure out where I'm at in this messy middle? And the speaker was like, honestly, that's where we're at. That's where everything is this is being built real time. And this is probably one of the more unique experiences is that it's obvious how it's being built in real time. And we're watching this news just evolve at this incredible pace. And hallucination is still probably, I think, one of the stats was still 27% of workers and leaders are still worried about it, which you should be. That's what makes you a passenger.
Hmm.
If you are not critically thinking, that is, if you copy paste, you're a passenger. If you are all about speed, you are a passenger. If you critically think, you are a driver. If you utilize the smaller, lesser explored functions like specific instructions or a specific document outlining and giving it Socratic prompting feedback, like that is a driver. It's a very strategic purpose to the output. You're going to maybe not get the best output, but you would definitely get a better output than a passenger would. And that is also raising the bar of the baseline of human output quality expectations. So I think we talked about this in our leadership meeting, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. How, okay, everyone's going to quote, save time with AI, and you're going to replace employees. And you know what? that is just, I don't see that happening. What I'm seeing is everything is getting now more condensed. I am not saving time by using AI. I am just accomplishing more in my day. And I'm like, so what does this mean, like saving time? Whoever came up with that in the first place? Is it I'm saving time on stuff that is less valuable? And now I have time for more things. Like, I feel like that phrase alone is kind of really misunderstood and driving a lot of incorrect decisions. I don't know what you
Well, I'm
think about
curious.
that one.
What's funny was I actually was meaning to talk about this with you. You know, me and Sarah practice a lot of like fundamentals, like the EOS type system, and every Friday. So tomorrow will be Friday for us, but this will come out, I guess, next week. We have our same page meeting. And I was going to bring this up with you. Yesterday when we had our quarterly planning session, and you were talking a lot about this. You know, there was one comment that you made that maybe it's semantics, but I was finding myself thinking a little differently about what you just said. And so I wanted to ask you, I guess, about this because, for me, I often, when I talk with prospective clients, like I had a meeting with a prospective client last week, and, he was asking me, he's like, how do you guys use this besides just sales and marketing? I was talking about like all the operational things we do on, SOPs and organization and, leadership structure and presentations and all the things that we use it for internal needs. And so I was telling him last week about how I would say is saving me so much time to work smarter. And when yesterday you were really honing in on or talking about how you don't think it does that, I was finding myself feeling very conflicted by kind of what you were saying. So maybe you could elaborate. But for me, where I think this goes from being a driver is, I use AI in every aspect of my business life and also my personal life. And I feel like it's saving me a ton of time and allowing in the time that I'm saving to be freed up to do other really exciting things that I couldn't have gotten to before I had the advantage or availability or access to some of these really smart AI systems. So I guess could you maybe just clarify that because now this is the second day you've mentioned this, how it doesn't save time, and I'm feeling conflicted by that comment.
Okay, I know what you're talking about because I was going to ask you, like, what is he? Okay, so here's an example. I can take a summary, and I had like 2 hours blocked off to read all these summaries. I can get it done in half an hour with a TLDR. Hey, AI, read this, compare it to other newer articles, and give me the current status of this situation. I'm not going to then go and take a walk for an hour and a half.
Oh,
So
okay.
it
Now
saved no
got it.
time because now all I did is now I'm refilling that hour and a half that I was, quote, saving by being efficient with now other work. And
Okay.
so that's where I think like employees are also feeling a little stressed out. So, we were talking about business. Are you driving AI or is it driving your business down? And this all starts with the leadership conversations. And even though we've been so active for over 3 years now in all as many platforms as we can handle, it is still overwhelming to figure out where to start. And so, you've got to really open your arms as a leader and start closing them around your business and figuring out, okay, I need to help guide this conversation, or it's just going to be a free for all of fear and nonsense and inefficiency, and frankly, potentially danger if you're, not putting some guardrails around some of the security aspects, which is still over half of the people who do these surveys are still concerned about that. And I believe rightly so. So, that is an interesting conversation. We've talked about a lot that the data you have in your business, if it's not clean and accessible by AI, you will find yourself really inefficient, not able to use some LLM types of techniques or like an internal LLM or connections or agents, even. And if you really can't speed that up, then you're going to be so far behind. And we don't want to be
Hmm.
fear mongers, but man, we are just seeing this fly by. And so you got to get the foundations in order. And it's really on you as a leader, business owner, founder, CEO to own it. There's nothing right now that probably should be more of a priority. And it's not because we're fear mongering, but it's because it's here whether you like it or not. I mean,
You
most
know, it's
people say, "Oh, I don't use it," but it's built into just about everything we're using.
what's really funny, I think, Sarah, on that point obviously I'm part of a couple of different business groups with other entrepreneurs. And the fear thing has been a really interesting one that we've been talking about now for gosh, a lot, not just because since COVID, but the last year or two. And I have to say, this is really funny from a personal point. I want to share a quick story because for me, as a typical entrepreneur, it's like I have this weird Jekyll and Hyde thing going on where everything is rose-colored glasses. I often am very overly positive. Everything's going to be fine. We'll figure it all out. All is good. But that's probably half of my brain, if not more. And there's definitely a good part of my brain that is the sky is falling, doomsday mindset. And I have to say, which is really weirdly odd to admit, is that sometimes that fear actually does drive me really well. And so, for example, from a personal point of view, tying it back to the AI side, is I have two daughters, which is now is crazy how old they are, but one is 21 and one is 19. And I am very afraid about what their future career is going to look like. Where, I have these interesting debates in some networking groups I'm part of, and we talk about what jobs are safe from AI. And we're like, besides maybe like a HVAC, electrical, plumbing, trade type of job, pretty much every job out there is a little scary. Um, and so, with that, with my daughters, I guess inspired by fear, I've been working so hard with them the last couple of years on getting them very advanced and being a driver in AI to the point where, when they were, back home, not in college, proudly they would often come to me and ask me for advice about, school and college and friends and all these things, which obviously is a very proud dad moment when, your daughters come to you and ask you for life advice. But when they were going off to college, I took the initiative with them to sit down and kind of think about what gaps they might have until they create a group of friends and mentorship and whatnot on getting advice. And so due to that, like with Chat GPT, we built out custom GPTs for them with like almost like a career advisor was one of them. One of them was about their career they wanted to do and giving them kind of like industry advice. And both of my kids have been using that extensively, and now they're showing their sorority friends about this stuff, and it is kind of neat. So when I go and visit them at school and I meet some of their friends, often this AI conversation comes up. And so I have to say, it is kind of neat where once you get someone, hooked on the value of where this could go and using it to help drive and level up your life, I think there's huge opportunities here. But then I have other friends and they aren't as, advanced with AI and they aren't really showing, their staff or their children about this. And now they're feeling reluctant and they don't know where to start. That's why I love that article you shared with me yesterday. So I feel like it does a really good job at putting into light that, again, more from a positive point of view, that you have to find a way to leverage this to help, grow all aspects of your life.
Hmm. Yeah, and if you don't get a handle on it as a business owner, it's going to spiral without you. So I think it was, shoot, I think it might have been the Times. I don't have the which publication, but the title is More Tech Workers Max Out Their AI Use. So
Hmm.
organizations are monitoring AI usage and saying, great, our team is using it. Well, what's happening is they're racking up massive bills. But is that
Wow.
usage actually useful? And so instead of like your team, no matter what, they need your direction on this. You're feeling lost, but you know what? I'm going to say it. It's your job as a leader to figure it out.
I
You
agree
have got
100%.
to get your head out of the sand. Enough is enough. There's no excuse anymore. In fact, that was one of the first slides this morning was the CEO of Section was like, stop making excuses. It's everywhere. It's inexpensive. Figure it out. Just start somewhere because you are doing no one any favors by not offering guidance and direction. Because having a policy is very different than having compliance. And if you don't start with anything at the top, you can't then build and differentiate and help your team not feel so overwhelmed by something that is frankly uncertain is probably the most comprehensive word right now.
It's funny on that, Sarah. I mentioned like I had a meeting with that prospect last week. I had another one where I met up for breakfast. And gosh, your story reminded me of that, but it was really interesting. And I wanted to share this real fast because I think there's also a mentality around this. So his comment to me was he's, my age. I would say he's probably maybe a little bit older, but probably the mid 50s, let's say. And he was, I hate to use the word complaining, but it was. He was maybe disappointed, was probably a better word. He was really disappointed. He had a bunch of younger staff on his team. And he's like, I can't get them to use AI and no one's talking about it. We aren't using it, and just these youngins, or however he worded it, are not embracing it. And in his mind, he tied AI into like innovation slash social media. It's all that things for young people. And so, to your point just now, it's interesting. I did in a very kind way. I asked him to walk me through how he uses it, and it was nothing. He used it once in a while. He said to write emails, and maybe to have it review some kind of report that was too lengthy and TLDR, you didn't want to read. But to your point, it's really interesting. As I was talking with him a little bit about, things that he could do to kind of, dip his toe in the water to get comfortable with it. 'Cause I think a strong leader leads by example, to your point. So I really appreciate you bringing that one up because I think from a driver point of view, if the leadership team is not clear on how they're going to use it, they shouldn't expect the rest of their company to use. And I think also I wanted to share, yesterday I really appreciated during our leadership quarterly planning meeting, you know, even for us, we are, I would say, intermediate plus, very, very comfortable and very, very active in AI. But we're all moving so quickly, even there for us, there's so much more that we could be doing. And I think for us, even though we have like, monthly AI meetings and we have a whole dedicated Slack channel for sharing all this stuff, even for us, we can be much more efficient how we kind of share the wisdom of what we're using, and how we can be using it better. So I think, to your point, step one needs to be is as an organization, the leadership team needs to understand the value this could bring to drive the business growth, and then drive down to their teams how they all can be using it to help elevate themselves, their department, and the company. And then I think from there is kind of phase two is kind of where we're at is like, my gosh, to your point, 20 minutes ago is there's just so much out there. It's rapidly changing. Things are all of a sudden the hottest thing. And then the next thing, like Sora is now gone or going to be gone. It's just, there's so much rapid change happening. I think you do need some people on your team that are going to be kind of accountable or ownership around this because it does get a little overwhelming sometimes. That's why I was saying was a phase two versus phase one might be kind of a smart way to be a driver around all of this stuff. What are your thoughts around that?
I agree. And I was thinking too, like, all right, yeah, he's overwhelmed because he's trying to run a business. But here's the problem with continuing to push it off. It's just like anything else, like your garage, your closet, your fridge. It just keeps filling up with stuff and it's on your mind and it creates this heavy residue. And I'm seeing AI do that to business owners and to frankly executives. Like CMOs are overwhelmed as it is, and then we add this on top of it. Like
Hmm.
that's why a lot of organizations, if you are at the C-suite level and you have a CMO, they are not your AI person. You need a dedicated AI person because it is not just a marketing and sales tool. I think, like you have to you have to find a structured way to start making experiments and just getting through the process because that's all the rest of us are doing.
Hmm.
We have none of us have it figured out. Like, even though we're talking about it, you're in the same boat as we are. You're just less knowledgeable about the nuances, and you've got less gray hairs from ChatGPT's freaking hallucination nonsense. Man, me and that tool, we just do not get along.
You're not friends.
No.
And I love it. So it's
Yeah.
really funny.
I think about the residue on your mind, and like the minute you start doing something about it, you're going to feel so much better. It's just
Hmm.
like there are so many things. Like a great example this morning, I brought two things of makeup to the gym, and I'm like, all right, the intention is only one of these leaves with me. And so I looked at them and I'm like, you know what? I don't even like this color makes me look like I've got the flu. I'm just going to throw it away. But you have like sunk cost bias and, you
Hmm.
know, all the things. And especially as tools roll out and they're going to get more expensive, don't ignore that. Be intentional, but don't commit. And so that's the part where jump on board with this because it is fun right now. Don't make it so serious. Everything, my best friend and I were talking last night, like everything doesn't have to be so dang serious. And AI is one of those things that if you kind of just play with it, it could be fun. You know, I
Actually, you
build
know
all
what's
kinds of fun personal things with it, but I really find a lot of fun in making everyone's life easier at work. And part of it is for me, one of if you're like an integrator type of mindset where you are a doer, a project person, a logical organizer, I look at every new thing with how could AI make this better or faster? So rolling out that, I don't know what grade you'd give my little quarterly report for me, that the level of effort I put into it and the output, I give it a freaking A minus. Like that was solid. If I'd
4 out
put
of
maybe
5.
10 more minutes into, what'd you say?
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Yeah, if I'd put
Yeah.
10 more minutes into it, something that would have taken someone like, I don't know, 2.5 hours to produce, I was able to do with little to no direction. And so I just keep questioning myself and even our team. They're like, how could we actually build this somewhere else? And like the tools, every week we've got something new. And so, I mean, I
Well,
don't
I was going
know.
to share one thing I was just going to share real fast. I like the way you mentioned about, the fun part. And again, I think me and you are very odd that we find a lot of this stuff super fun. But, something that Ryan said, our director of service operation at our quarterly planning yesterday, that I really took to heart is he was sharing some examples how, and it sounded like for him it was a fun element, but also for a way to uncover opportunities. Is, he would take some really smart prompt that he created and he would run it through a couple different LMs. So go through ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and just see what they all would come back with. And then from there, pick the one that he found of most value. And then again, with a challenger mindset, kind of go back and keep unprobing. And so, for me, as I, admitted numerous times, is, I continue to have, I would say, GBT be kind of like the first thing that I would go to when I want to leverage an AI system to help me with whatever task I'm working on. And one of the main reasons why I have not been as active in all the other platforms is because it has been performing so well for me with the way I've built it out and created all the background files and information, the knowledge, and it does perform very well for me. But today, inspired again by you, Sarah, and then what Ryan said yesterday is I'm now trying that. And for me, I'm looking at it less from a perspective of me cheating on ChatGPT, but more on me from a fun perspective, almost gamifying the situation of like, okay, so I'm already thinking through what I wanted to help me with. What is the harm of taking an extra couple seconds for me to pop in the various tools and just seeing if something else has a better solution or recommendation? Because what I am finding is, and Sarah, you've done a really good job kind of talking this through. Maybe you can kind of give a summary here in a minute if you're cool with that. But each of the platforms usually have their strengths and weaknesses. And so for me, I'm just trying to figure out for my role in the organization, kind of on the CEO side, and then also on the head of like the business development piece and talking with new prospective clients, is I'm trying to figure out which tool is going to help me serve, or solve or address whatever the task at hand is, because it's never a kind of a one size fits all kind of model. So maybe as we're wrapping up here, maybe to encourage those that are like trying to figure out which kind of tool to start with, can you maybe give your thoughts on like high level, what the main platforms are and which one you would go to for what? Any thoughts there?
You know, this might be controversial, but I wouldn't even start with them yet. If you have done almost next to nothing, start with what you already have in your company that you're already paying for.
Got
Nine
it.
times out of 10, I would almost, I'm not going to say guarantee, but I'm on a podcast. Who's going to fight me on it? I could guarantee that you have tools in your organization right now that have AI built into them that you just are ignoring. It's just background noise. Like if you're on a Google workspace, a business workspace, you have Gemini, you have Nano Banana, you have Gmail will write your emails. You can summarize Google Drive. Like that tool alone, zero extra cost. At least maybe we're grandfathered in. I don't know, but that one is a major tool. Zoom, the tool we use to record this podcast. We have a ton of AI tools. They even coach me after this podcast and maybe tell me how I could have done a better job, which I'm sure that'll be quite a read. So I would really honestly start with just use what you've got. Don't go spend
That's
money because if
smart.
you
I like
can't
that.
invest any money, just invest time. Just start with your time because listen, Dan Martell's going to say, I think he's probably having a field day with this because this is exactly what he's been talking about. Pick those low-hanging fruit things that drive you absolutely crazy, take an unnecessary amount of time, and the easiest delegator is you to AI. And once you start getting comfortable and understanding its limitations, I would say that's like once you know the limitations of certain tools, I would say you could consider yourself definitely an intermediate user. So there's a long way to go. You've just got to start using it and just keep on questioning, huh, is it capable of doing blank? And just doing that instead of taking it at face value.
I love that. I think that kind of summarized really well the whole driver's, the passenger princess element because, I think that's kind of really exciting where it's just like getting into the driver's seat and, heading towards some kind of direction. I liked how you simplified that because I think starting with something, I think is usually people's hardest first step. It's just, again, dipping your toe in the water, like I mentioned before. You just got to start with something. And again, for me, it's like obviously been years of doing this, but I'm so comfortable and confident with all of this because I'm so actively driving into the system. But even for me, it's like I want to become a much more advanced user. And it's just, again, obviously, when you're an advanced user, it becomes obviously overwhelming sometimes because there's just so much opportunity out there. So I liked how you put that into perspective where just start out and I think just build upon from there.
Yeah, just once you become intermediate, then your job is to keep pushing the limits of what's possible and keep elevating and asking it for the impossible. And sometimes you might be really surprised and you're like, whoo, I didn't think about that. So that's, you want to get to the point where what you're asking for was never something you would have ever considered before. And you want to be pleasantly surprised, just like I did with that quarterly report yesterday. Like, had no idea it could be so beautiful in such a short period of time.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, and we're super nerds, so reach out to us. Like maybe follow this show if you're not already, because we post a new episode every Tuesday. Literally a 2-minute tip. If you pop all those together, you've got an entire AI strategy for like a whole half a year, probably as many tips as we put out there. So, well, Jay, this was a fun one, and we'll probably do more of these as the world just keeps on turning at light speed.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.